On today's episode of Empowering Women in Real Estate, the podcast, we're going to be talking about business confidence, owning your value in real estate.
Hi, I'm Karen Cooper, a wife, mom of three, real estate broker, team owner, and founder of Empowering Women in Real Estate. As a realtor, I've personally helped well over 700 families in my career, and now I help thousands of women from all across the country balance real life and real estate through daily inspiration, motivation, and actionable plans to increase their success. Listen in as I share stories and tips from my life and business and interview some of my favorite people.
Hi there, I'm glad you're here for today's episode. So, today I want to talk to you about confidence. And honestly, I feel like this is a great way to cap off the month because we started out, if you're listening to this episode the day that it airs, it is the end of February. And we started out February with our first episode being about comparison and, kind of how that can kind of pull you off track. And I feel like the conversation around confidence really kind of complements that well, right? The more confident you are, the less you're impacted by comparison. It still happens, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it happens a little less. But confidence is really something that I think when it comes to our real estate sales businesses, confidence will make or break your business in a lot of different ways. Confidence impacts how you market, how you show up. Confidence is reflected in how you work, right? Your boundaries, whether you're a 24/7 Pop-Tart kind of agent or whether you have some kind of boundaries around your work. Confidence shows up in what you charge. Confidence shows up in how you work and your ability to articulate that. Confidence shows up in what you do when you are disrespected. We've all had those clients that are, I don't even mean just difficult. Like, we've all had difficult clients and we know that, real estate, buying and selling homes, these are very stressful situations, but we've all had those situations with clients that were just terrible, mean, disrespectful, toxic, and your confidence level is going to impact how you handle that and how you stand up for yourself and what you do and how you manage it. There's so many things around confidence. And so I thought this would be a good conversation to have for today. So I have a few, I don't know, maybe like a handful of kind of points, things to talk through, but then I also have a little exercise. And I do actually think, I was trying to find it, but I can't find it because I think it was a couple of years ago. But I do have an exercise for you today, which might have been an episode from a couple years ago. But I want to talk you through it today too, because it really does feed into the confidence conversation. So make sure you stick around for that. So here's the thing about confidence is our confidence tends to fluctuate, right? Especially when you are new. If you are new in the business, anytime you do anything new, whether you're new to real estate, whether you're new to showing up on social media, whether you're new to podcasting, whether you're new to creating reels, whether you're new to being a listing agent versus a buyer's agent, whatever it is, I think anytime you're new to something, confidence is a little bit of an issue, a little bit of a struggle, because you have not yet built up that confidence in whatever it is that you are doing. And, the only way, truly, the only way that I have known to kind of push through that and to build your confidence is, I usually say it's like a muscle, like you have to work it. And that happens by getting reps, studying how to create the perfect reel or how to start a podcast is very different than actually trying it and actually doing it. And, depending on your personality, studying the preparation, that can certainly help your confidence, but there is no confidence builder like actually doing it, actually trying it. And I think just having that, that kind of grace and understanding with yourself that It's never perfect. The first time you do something is never going to be as good as the fifth time or the 10th time or the 15th time or the 100th time. And the only way you're going to get to that, the polishedness, right? The knowledge, the experience, the confidence that comes from doing something that many times is by doing it that many times. And so I think just, kind of having that understanding. Confidence is almost two things. There's confidence in your skill, and that's what shows up when you're doing something new for the first time or something that you've done over and over again. But then there is a confidence of self. And that is different. That's not driven by skill or how often that you've done something. That's just an inherent confidence that you have in who you are and who you were created to be. I mean, it's kind of like authenticity, but there's a confidence around that. You're clear on who you are. And that brings so much confidence when you have that. One thing that I see with confidence and especially around, a lot of women, a lot of successful women, I've struggled with this in my business is, you look really successful on paper, but inside you're just not so sure. You know, it's kind of that, it's almost like imposter syndrome. You're afraid somebody's gonna find you out, gonna figure out that maybe you're not that good. You're not that interesting. And I think a lot of us struggle with that, especially with our industry, the way it is, right? You have an amazing year. Maybe 2025 was an incredible year for you. And so you should be riding high in the confidence factor. But what I see with a lot of agents is, especially if their pipeline is thin starting out the new year, you're starting over again. There's that kind of starting over that happens, and your confidence wanes as a result. Like you don't have the confidence that I can't recreate what I did before, or I don't feel as busy as I did then. And I think part of that comes from the way our industry is, which is very focused on numbers, on output, on production. And obviously, what we do is sell houses. So there is a production aspect of that. But when you have all of your identity in your business and your value wrapped around how much production you're doing, that really impacts your confidence negatively, because then you don't have the confidence that your business is just going to continue. Like I can honestly say this is one area that I have a lot of struggles around confidence, but this is one area where I don't have this struggle necessarily. I don't even look at it as I did this year and now what am I going to do this year? It's just like, this is just my business. This is just my business. And sometimes it's this and sometimes it's that, but this is just the business, and the business will continue to come and I will continue to do the things. And like I don't have that like fear or concern of, what if this time is not as much as that time. I don't feel that. I think there were times in my career where I did feel that, but I don't feel that anymore. And probably part of that comes from surviving, that really terrible market crash. What was it, like 06, 07? Honestly, we started seeing the effects of it in late 05. And, surviving that, shoot, my business can survive anything. When you survive something like that, like it gives you a different perspective that things are always going to come and go. And part of that, with confidence is part of that is experience. It's time in the business. It's knowledge. Like, I've seen so many ups and downs. I've seen, incredible markets where things were really high, and then I've seen terrible markets where things were really low. But I know like it always kind of levels out, and people are always going to need to buy or sell homes. Even in the worst markets, there are always people who need to buy and sell homes. So if I can just stay focused and steady, which is, the state that I try to maintain, then I just know that that's going to happen. And there's some confidence that happens there. Confidence when it comes to specifically to your real estate business and kind of owning your value, it affects multiple areas. Specifically, think about how you work with your clients, right? There's trusting the value that you bring to the table. And our business, it does a really good job, social media does a really good job of causing us to question this all the time. If you listen to episode 391 about the comparison trap, you're on social media, you can be having the best day. You can feel like you've done the most amazing thing for your client. You've signed a beautiful listing, whatever it is. And you can open the social media app, doesn't matter which one, pick one. And in 30 seconds, you can be feeling like you are the worst realtor, business owner, person in the world because you're seeing 10 other people who've got, you know, a listing that's four times bigger or four times more listings or does a better job marketing or to you, right? Because you're comparing yourself. And so that really causes us to question the value that we bring. And our industry really, really does that. It's like, just like advertising marketing. Like the way it works is instilling doubt. Think about the beauty industry. The beauty industry only exists because doubt has been instilled in women that you need, lipstick to be pretty, that you need to have mascara on, that you need foundation to cover up what your skin looks like, that you need to color your hair if it's starting to turn gray. That industry only exists because we're conditioned to believe that there's something wrong with us and we need these things to improve ourselves. And it's the same in every other industry, and it's the same in real estate, right? Everybody's always trying to sell you something to do something different because what you're doing isn't good enough and isn't enough. And the more confidence you can have in your value, your unique skill, right? We all have a unique skill. What is your unique skill that you bring to the table? And the more clear you can be in what that is, and the more you can trust that, then the easier it is to clearly articulate your value when you are meeting with a seller to talk about listing their home, or when you're meeting with a buyer to talk about, being their buyer's agent and helping them to purchase a home. And, there's a confidence that is required there. I will tell you what your value is not. Your value is not in your availability. We are very much in a world that is, they talk about on social media, like your reels need to be like as few seconds as possible. Like TikTok has taught us that, right? Because, and I don't have TikTok, but from what I understand, the faster, the quicker, the shorter, like the attention spans are so tiny. And so where it would be reasonable that somebody would call and maybe leave a message and you'd get back to them within an hour to schedule an appointment. If you don't answer the phone, if you don't get back to them we feel like if we don't respond to a text in 30 seconds, then somebody's going to move on to someone else. And there are definitely some people who are like that. But that's not the value you bring. Your value is not in sitting by the phone and waiting for it to ring so that you can open a door for someone. There's so much more that you bring to the table. And so getting clear on that, there's kind of three areas around that the more clear you can get. And I would encourage you to maybe write these three things down and kind of think about them and write them out for yourself so that you can start to really kind of clearly and articulately, confidently convey these to people. If you're listening to this and thinking, I know what I should be doing, I just need a clear plan and follow through, I want to tell you about the Empowering Women in Real Estate Inner Circle. This is not a mindset membership. It's tactical. Inside the Inner Circle, I teach my exact real estate systems, the same ones my team and I have used for more than a decade to build consistent referral-based businesses. We cover how to generate business through your database, geographic farming, social media, and relationship-based prospecting, right down to the templates, scripts, and workflows. Every week, you get a plan of the week that tells you exactly what to do step by step, so you're never guessing what matters most. You also get access to the high-level monthly trainings I do for my real estate team, a dedicated monthly mastermind, quarterly business reviews, and annual business planning. If you're done piecing things together and want a proven system you can actually follow, the inner circle was built for you. You can learn more at empoweringwomeninrealestate.com. Click on inner circle. And when you use promo code first month free, you'll get your first month of the program on me. And, I always found for myself, I was primarily a listing agent, a listing specialist. And I knew, and this is a mistake that I see with a lot of agents, especially agents who are not used to being a listing agent, is they kind of go into the appointment sort of flying by the seat of their pants. And they're not clear on what they charge, and they're not clear on how they work. And when you're not clear on those things, it's hard to articulate that value, and it's hard for someone else to understand that value and to see that value in you. So for me, I was always very clear. I knew what I charged. I knew the exceptions that were right for me and for my business for that. And I knew how I worked, and I knew what I did. So it was very clear. Like, I wasn't walking in kind of hemming and hawing and being unsure and, well, what do you want? This is how I do it. And that was always very clear. So there's kind of three things. And one is sort of exactly what I just said. This is how I work, right? You want to be able to clearly articulate how you work and how you do things. Get clear on that now for yourself, both when it comes to working with buyers and when it comes to working with sellers. That is part of setting expectations. And the better you can set expectations, the better every transaction is going to go and the better relationship you're going to have with your clients. But if you don't take the time to understand what that looks like and to understand how you do it, then it's almost like every transaction is different and every transaction is new. And there's no rhythm or momentum, and then you can't build that confidence. So be really clear. This is how I work. This is how I do things. When I would be on a listing appointment, this is how I market. These are the things that I do, and this is why I do them. And it was just very, very clear about that with that expectation. The second one is, this is what I charge. What do you charge? Is it the most you can get somebody to pay? Do you wait to see what they're willing to offer you? You need to know for yourself, based on your experience, your time, how much financial investment you have in everything that you do for your business and for your clients, what you charge. And, I always knew, and I was always crystal clear going in on my, especially with my listing appointments, this is what I charge, period. That was kind of it. And I would have, sellers would sometimes say, and, do you negotiate? And I would just say no and just kind of move on, because this is what I charge. And this is, I was very clear on my value around what I did, my knowledge, my exposure, my network, all the things that I brought to the table. I was always very clear about that. So get really clear about that for yourself. And if you have situations where you might charge something different, I had some of those situations, know what they are, be clear on what they are. So, and that just makes everything you do so much easier. When you don't have that clarity, that's when you start, underpricing, over discounting. You'll just kind of go with what anybody says just to kind of get the deal versus being really confident in what you do and why you do it. And then the third question is, this is who I serve. And that's not really necessarily a question. That's not something that you're bringing up in an appointment, but that's a business clarifying point for you. And that's kind of like niches, right? For me, there were times in my business where there were times where I went anywhere and did anything. It didn't matter if it was a rental. It didn't matter what the price point was. It didn't matter if I drove 90 minutes one way, I did anything. But then the busier you get and the more business you have, then you start to narrow that down. And so, I was very clear. I would only work with renters in these particular areas, right? Because of the travel time or whatever. And then after a while, I wouldn't work with renters anymore at all. And then, maybe I would only work with landlords, but only in these certain areas. And then with listings, I started to narrow that down. And so being clear about that for yourself, having parameters, that does not mean that from time to time there might be a situation or something that you're going to do differently. But when you can be clear on how your business runs and what you expect and who you serve and how you're going to do it, that brings so much confidence because you're going in clear on what you do and how you do it. And there's no question that you're the leader. There's no question that you're the professional. There's no question that you're the expert because you're clear on those things. If you go in and you're, well, sure, you want that? Yeah, I could do that. You want, oh, yeah, I could do that. Oh, I could do that too. Well, sure. Well, like that does not inspire any confidence. When you go in and say, this is what I do, this is how I do it, this is why I do it, like there's no question. There's just such a confidence that's there as far as that's concerned. And here's the thing. I mean, I think sometimes, especially as women, we're almost kind of taught that confidence is it's like arrogance. And that's not what it is. Confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is clarity. That's what confidence is. It's you're clear. You're clear on what you do. You're clear on why you do it. You're clear on the value that you bring. I, I'm not arrogant about that. Like that's just I just know. I just know that that's what I do. I've done this enough to know. I'm clear enough in what I provide and what I'm willing to provide. And it's okay to have that. That's part of a boundary. Some of the struggles that we have when it comes to confidence is there's kind of three things I think that give us some pause when it comes to confidence in our real estate businesses. And one is definitely the comparison. We've touched on it a couple of times. I mean, I think the minute you start comparing yourself with other people, it is like, and I think I even said this in episode 391, which is about the comparison trap. Comparison starts to slowly erode your confidence in yourself and in your business over time. And so the more you're comparing yourself to other people and to what their business looks like and to what their social media feeds looks like, which is really just what we think from the outside things look like. We literally have no idea what's happening on the inside. That comparison starts to affect your confidence because it causes you to question, right? So that's one. Another one is market shifts. Market shifts can definitely have an impact on our confidence, especially if you have not experienced a market shift before. We saw this a lot with agents who got into the business during COVID, right? Or, kind of coming out of that period when it was like the land of milk and honey, right? For a couple of years there. And so it was easy, quote unquote. And then as the market started to kind of normalize again, suddenly now you have agents that have no idea how to ask for a price reduction. You have agents who don't know what a broker's open is. Some of the basic fundamental things that, for decades we've had to know how to do in being a successful real estate practitioner, these folks don't even know because it hasn't been needed, because the only market they've known was a good hot market where you put up a sign and there's 30 people or 115 people are coming to an open house or there's 50 offers. I mean, those are all real situations that have happened in my market. And market shifts can really impact your confidence. You could have been killing it during some of those periods of the market, and then the market starts to shift a little bit, and now suddenly you're not so sure anymore. You don't know what to do with a price adjustment. Like you don't know what to do. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with agents who their listing is now sitting on the market for 3 weeks and they literally have no idea what they should be doing. And so those market shifts can really impact your confidence. And then just, life shifts, shifts in your personal life when things start happening, whether it's in your own health, or maybe you're doing some caregiving, or as your children, like as they grow and your relationship starts to change, like all those things can kind of start to impact your confidence. And it can, you were so clear and so sure about things one way, and now things look different. Things are changing, relationships are changing, and that can affect your confidence because now you're just not so sure. All the things that you thought you knew, you don't really know anymore, or they don't apply anymore. And I think we see that a lot in our real estate businesses. If you've been in business a long time, if you've done a lot of business, this is year 24 for me, there's almost kind of and it's such a shame too, but there's almost kind of this tug between agents that are younger and newer in the business and the agents that are more seasoned and have been around for longer. And there seems to be this like the younger agent, and certainly this is not everybody, I'm just telling you some things I've seen, with some younger or newer agents looking at the older seasoned agents and like, you know, you're old, you don't know how we do it now, you don't understand social media, like not seeing that there's actually value in things that they can learn. And then the same is true for the more experienced agents, right? The ones who have been around for longer. They can look at the newer agents and not believe that there's anything that they can learn from them. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have seen that. I've seen that within brokerages. I've seen that on my own team. Agents who don't believe or understand that they can actually learn something from people who are new, right? Who are newer in the business. And that's such a shame because we all bring amazing things to the table. That's actually a really good tie-in to the little exercise that I want to share with you. So this exercise is it's a 10 things list. What I want you to do is I want you to make a list of 10 things. And these are like the 10 things that you bring to the table, right? Your 10 traits, 10 things about you that are valuable that you bring. So I'll kind of share with you, and I did this, I don't even know how many years ago I wrote this list, but a couple of the things that I put on my list is I can make confusing things easy to understand. I'm well connected. I have resources for anything. I care. I genuinely care about my clients. I have consistent communication. I have problem solving creativity. I have a lot of market knowledge. I'm calm, so I tend to be the voice of reason. I'm experienced. I was a managing broker. I don't overdo it. There's a lot of people that just kind of overdo it. And I'm an investor, which actually brings a lot of knowledge to the table. So those are my 10 things that I wrote down. And so I would love for you to make yourself a list of like your 10 things. And the really beautiful thing about this is even if you are newer to the business, even if you are newer to the industry, or even if like me, you've been in business for 24 years, it's not just what are 10 things that you've only experienced or known from real estate. If you worked in a different line of work, I was an EMT. I've shared this too before, in my 20s for 10 years. And so obviously from that experience, I tend to, that's part of where the calmness comes from, right? Calm under pressure. And so, you can take what are the traits that you have that maybe you learned from other lines of work or other things that you did that you kind of bring to the table. And so I think making a list like that, I did that list probably, I wish I dated it. I did this probably 3 years ago, maybe longer ago than that. And, having it to look back on, that's a confidence builder. You can look at it and go, okay, I do bring some good things to the table. I do have some value. There are things that I provide that are extremely worthwhile. And so having that, I would encourage you that after you listen to this episode today, just take a few minutes. That can take 5 minutes. It does not take long. And in fact, probably the less time you give yourself, the better, because you're just kind of thinking, quickly without overthinking. And just make that list. And if you struggle, is there a trusted friend? Is there a trusted family member that you could ask them and see what they say? That would actually kind of be really actually interesting to see what other people might have to say as far as that's concerned. So, when it comes to confidence in our business, I think the number one thing is getting really clear on what you bring to the table, being really clear on who you are. That is the number one thing to building that business confidence and being able to portray yourself confidently. And then I think one last sort of little thing that I would share is stop tying your confidence to outcomes. Losing one listing doesn't mean that you're not good. Having one bad deal doesn't mean that you're incompetent. Even losing a couple, that doesn't mean that, when your confidence in the way that you feel about yourself and the way that you feel about your business is predicated on the outcomes, then you are going to struggle with it. You are going to struggle with the confidence forever. And the confidence has to come from within, and it has to come from such a clear sense of the value that you bring. And that's where that true business confidence comes from. And that's going to give you so much more. There's like a peace that's associated with it. You're not constantly having to overwork to prove how worthy you are. You're not having to constantly say yes when you really would like to say no. You're not having to constantly tweak what you do instead of stabilizing it because you're not confident in what you're doing. There's a self-assuredness that comes from having that confidence. And I really want you to have that. So that's what I have for you today. I would love to share with me some of the things that are on your list. If you do that, the 10 things list exercise, message me. I'm on Instagram at karen.w.cooper. And until next time, stay well.
Thank you for listening to Empowering Women in Real Estate, the podcast. Click subscribe to be notified every Wednesday when our latest episode is released, and be sure to check out our group on Facebook.